Well, a very warm welcome to everybody this evening, and to those attending, it's very good to see you all back in the committee rooms again after such a long time, and also to see you looking so well and happy to be here. And also, you are meant to be. And also to our viewers watching live on the Council's YouTube channel, Hillingdon, London. This is a meeting of the Public Safety and Transport Committee, and my name is Councillor Keith Burrows, and I am the chairman of this meeting. Just some housekeeping, mainly for people in this room. We're not expecting a fire drill, so if the fire alarm does go, please follow officers to the nearest fire exit, and they will tell us where the designated fire points are. Also, for those in this room, if you do have one of the wonderful mobile gadgets, please can you ensure it's on silent or you turn it off altogether. And there is a comment on here about resident feedback forms for those watching via YouTube. So if you're so minded, you can complete one of our residents' feedback forms, apparently. These can be found in the information section underneath the YouTube video. These forms are intended to help us improve the way that we run our meetings in Council. So moving on to the agenda this evening. Agenda item 1 is apologies for absence and to report the presence of any substitute members. Steve?
No apologies for absence this evening, Chairman.
Thank you. Agenda item 2 is declarations of interest in any matters coming before this meeting. Are there any declarations to put forward? No? Agenda item 3 is to receive the minutes of the previous meeting. Now, these are on your packs, and the actual meeting refers to the meeting held in the Council Chamber here in the Civic Centre on the 20th of May 2021, where it was election of the committee members, election of the chairman, resolved that myself would be elected as chairman of the Public Safety and Transport Select Committee, and the election of vice chairman, and that resolved that Councillor Teddy Barnes be elected as vice chairman of this committee as well. So can we take these minutes as agreed and read? Councillor Sweeting.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just rope us back to the terms of reference of this committee? The last meeting I was in, the RESPOC meeting, it was a very detailed list of all of the areas of responsibility. Now, we've only got 6 here, including community safety and cohesion, and there are some areas that I would like some clarity on. For example, does our remit include air quality and air quality monitoring? Because that could be linked to antisocial behaviour, or it could be linked to environment. Also, I remember RESPOC having on it HS2 and its impact, and the proposed third runway at Heathrow. Now, because we have got transportation, will those issues be included in our remit? When it comes to community safety, again, that's an all-encompassing phrase, so maybe we could have that spread out in the details of what that actually entails.
Yes.
So the terms of references for the scrutiny committees have been simplified to enable representation of each service area of the council. So they don't go into too much detail. They just state the service area that is the responsibility of this committee. They also line up now effectively with the new cabinet portfolios from January. So not too much detail in the terms of reference now, but anything falling under those service areas will be part of this committee's remit. On the case of third runway and HS2, I can look into that and get a response for you.
But also the terms of reference have included that sometimes it does, some items do actually go into 2 scrutiny committees. So I was just sort of trying to clarify what goes into one and what comes here, so that we know that it is in fact our responsibility to scrutinise that area.
Of course, yeah. Any cross-cutting areas are noted just underneath. But again, I can confirm with any areas that you have a particular interest in which committee they'll be coming to.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. And commenting on HS2 and obviously the third runway, they are major planning developments as well, so there could be some cross-cutting. So Steve will look into that for us. Councillor Lewis.
Thank you. Perhaps we could also have the terms of reference for the cabinet member, so that we can see which we should be aligning to. In terms of the minutes of the 20th of May, I think there's a typo. I don't think the meeting actually lasted 10 minutes. At the bottom.
No, I think that's referring to the 10 minutes at the end of the full council meeting, when obviously the committees were decided, chairmen were appointed. And that would have been that time slot and that time frame for that part of the meeting. Because I did read that and I thought no, it was longer because we were all there. Okay, any further comments? No. So moving on. To confirm that the items of business marked as Part 1 will be considered in public, and the items marked Part 2 be considered in private. At the moment, everything is in Part 1. Agenda item 5, update on scrutiny call-in procedure. That will be you, Steve, to give that update. There have been some changes, some exciting changes, which our IT department have worked very hard at. So as councillors, I do implore you now to listen very carefully to what you're about to be told. Steve.
So hopefully this information won't be new to you. I'm just following up on some correspondence that was sent out via email on the 27th of May. You've got hard copies that I put on your desks as well, just to give you the full information about how the new scrutiny call-in process works. Democratic Services issued the new scrutiny call-in procedure following the Council's decision to transfer this responsibility to members of the relevant select committees. The procedure provides detailed guidance along with a guide on how to download and use the new scrutiny call-in app. The key things to note are that all Cabinet and Cabinet member decision notices now clearly identify the relevant select committee and thereby members of who can attempt to call in any decision. Select committee remits and council service areas who generate the reports based on the decision are now clearly aligned to enable this. The decision notices clearly show the last date any call-in request can be made, which is 5 working days at 5 p.m. after the date of the decision notice was published. It can only be a member of the select committee shown on the decision notice that can initiate a call-in request. A member cannot initiate a call-in on behalf of another select committee membership. The call-in request is done via the new Scrutiny Call-in app. This app can be accessed via a link for computer or laptop, or downloaded via an app that you have for iPad and mobile devices. Details on how to access the app have been provided, and you've got hard copies with you as well. The app has a simple online form to complete where you can provide details. Some of you may have had a look at it already and familiarise yourself with it. Once the online form is submitted, the call-in request is then sent via an automated email to all members of the Select Committee, including the councillor on the committee that initiated it. Councillors do not have to respond to the email, but if they wish to indicate their approval or rejection of the request, they will need to click on the link in the email to do so. Importantly, this also applies to the councillor initiating the call-in request. So if there are any questions, I'll field them now, and if there are any questions I can't answer, I'll field them to my manager. Any questions?
I'm sure it'll become clear if we ever get to the point where we are going to look at some call-in process. Most reports, most cabinet reports and just cabinet member reports that they make their individual decisions on, we know go through a very strict process anyway of both legal and financial overview. So what I'd just like to remind this committee is that when we are looking at a call-in, the call-in has got to be a valid call-in on something that is within our remit, but also something that has a fundamental issue within that decision. We are looking at decisions. We're not going to look at a report and call the report in because we don't like the report. It is the decisions we are scrutinising as a committee. And as a select committee, that has been given to us under the new constitution and the way these select committees have been set up to ensure that we scrutinise Cabinet and Cabinet member decisions within our remit of this committee, to ensure that those decisions do provide the best value for money and do provide what we would expect for our residents of Hillingdon. So, as I say, we won't just call something in because we don't like a report. We are looking at decisions. This is something that within the couple of months that I was the chairman of the Executive Scrutiny Committee, there were things that were trying to be called in about the reports. It's the decisions. So that's the fundamental thing we have to remember. And the app, I've seen the app. I saw a dummy of the app, the test site of it. And it does look very simple to use, very easy to use. So I'm sure that there's been many hours and late nights and candle burning within Democratic Services and IT to make sure that when we move into the Select Committee, it was all going to work. So we will see, as they say, time will tell. So thank you, Steve, for that. Agenda item 6, we have service overview, trading standards, environmental health and licensing. And it's really nice to see Stephanie Waterford. And so it's over to you, Stephanie, just to run through. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, everybody. So I've been asked to come and just give you an overview of the 4 different services that make up my areas of responsibility. We have environmental health, which consists largely of 2 teams. We've got the food, health and safety team, which are based here at the Civic. We've also got the imported foods team that are based down at London Heathrow Airport. And also trading standards services under this remit, and also the licensing department. The collective role of all of these teams is to ensure the safety of businesses, products and services across a variety of regulatory regimes. And I'll just go through each one of these teams in turn and just give you a rough overview of their responsibilities. So starting with food, health and safety, the team have a broad range of public protection responsibilities, mainly focused on food safety and health and safety in businesses. The areas of responsibility include food hygiene inspections, and we get around to about 1,600 of these each year, previous year aside, as most things were closed more than they were open over the last year. Public health and disease control duties, which has been pretty integral in the Council's COVID response. So the environmental health team have been carrying out investigations of outbreaks, also COVID secure inspections, even inspections of sort of managed quarantine hotels and all of that sort of thing. The investigation and enforcement responsibilities under health and safety regulations, so the team will go out and look at unsafe warehousing, forklift truck accidents, and they will investigate whether there are any failings under health and safety. They enforce the smoke-free regulations, so this is where you have a smoking shelter that has to be more than 50% open, otherwise it's deemed to be an enclosed space. And also a new responsibility for them is export health certificates, which is a change that's been brought about by Brexit, which is the manufacturers and food producers that we have in our borough who want to export their products to the EU and to other areas as well. We issue them certificates. So that's a rise in the workload of that particular area of work. We've also, under our health and safety powers, can ensure compliance with things like gas safety installations in commercial kitchens, which is something that the team regularly check as part of their food hygiene visits. We've got some recent highlights from the food safety team that have come to some investigations and legal cases and projects that have come to yield over the last few months. The one that you can see there, Ardas Catering, this was 3 defendants pleading guilty to 6 offences. It was an Indian sweet manufacturer based down in Hayes with rodent issues. They had poor hygiene standards and also poor management standards, food safety systems in place. Jaffna's was a very similar situation in terms of hygiene involving a takeaway in Hayes. For example, no hot water supply, poor hygiene, thick layers of debris, etc. on surfaces and on the floors. As mentioned on the previous page, the team have undertaken a proactive project in terms of gas safety compliance in commercial kitchens. And this was following an explosion which happened in the London Borough of Ealing area, which was caused by failures in a commercial kitchen, gas safety system in a commercial kitchen, which unfortunately caused some fatalities to residents living above the premises. So our team undertook a project to identify a number of to try and identify all our gas installations in commercial kitchens and just check the compliance. So what we've been doing is writing off to those with a return to say, well, these are your responsibilities, you're supposed to get a gas safety certificate for your installation, and we've asked them to produce those. So that's a rolling project that we're doing. We've identified about 1,000 businesses across Hillingdon, and we're slowly sort of getting through those, and we do have enforcement powers where there are issues with non-compliance. So next we have the Imported Food Service. Hillingdon is a port authority, which means that we have more responsibilities than perhaps other boroughs that don't have a port. And we have a whole team of food safety specialists down at the airport based in the cargo terminal who receive approximately 12,000 consignments of high-risk food each year. The main purpose of their responsibility is to check food is safe to enter the UK food chain. And the things that they will check for are deterioration, putrefaction, bacteriological contamination, so E. coli, salmonella, things like that. And they will also check for food fraud issues and also banned ingredients. So there's a number of colorants, for example, that are used in food manufacturing around the world that we've actually banned in this country. So they will check for all of those things, and also pesticide residues that could be harmful. So they will check all of those. We have all sorts of things coming through the port, fish, shellfish, some of them live. So we have very special facilities down there, massive fridges, bigger than houses, some of them, and we get lots of fruit, veg, nuts and seeds, spices as well, that we have to check and sample. Sampling is a part of that process as well. So we have a team of specialists, and they're mainly environmental health officers, but we also have food safety technicians and also veterinarians who will check the animal products and the animal byproducts. Some recent activity of the Imported Food Service. The main focus for the IFS has been Brexit, as I'm sure you can imagine, and there's been quite significant changes brought about from the switch from EU legislation and controls and even ICT systems over to the UK versions, and the actual transition period has been extended a number of times to kind of take into account the effects of the pandemic, but also the sheer significance of the changes. So from October, the team will have to check all consignments from EU member states who have previously enjoyed the freedom of movement in and out of our ports in this country. So that will place an additional workload onto the team by checking consignments from countries that they've never had to check before. So checks are regularly carried out also on undeclared consignments, which can reveal banned items. We get all sorts of things through the port, so we get bushmeat, hunting trophies, endangered species, and most of these are destroyed or held as evidence for further enforcement action by Border Force. So we saw many impacts of the pandemic. We pretty much saw all planes grounded overnight in March last year. So we saw the levels of consignments coming through the port just drop off a cliff. But ever since then, it has been steadily increasing as the pandemic recovery has kind of been taking place, and we're now back up to sort of 85-90% of normal levels, and that's expected to increase for the remainder of the year and even more because of the impacts of Brexit. Then on to trading standards, and this team are focused mainly on consumer protection, so it's product safety, fair trading, weights and measures. They will enforce against rogue traders and scam operators, seizing illicit alcohol and tobacco, and we use detection dogs for a wide variety of these operations. So they will take a team of detection dogs into premises to find illicit alcohol and tobacco products, and even counterfeit goods, as our traders are coming up with more and more elaborate ways to conceal illicit products, which is why we rely so heavily on the dogs. They enforce weights and measures legislation, so every now and then they will go and calibrate, for example, weigh bridges, and they sort of checks in pubs and things like that. They will carry those out. And they're also responsible for the product safety checks of goods coming through Heathrow. So with the IFO are focused on food consignments, trading standards are focused on goods and products. So they'll carry out a range of checks on products coming through LHR. Also, they're responsible for pocket investigations under the Proceeds of Crime Act. So where we can prove financial benefit from criminal activity, the team will also make an application under the Proceeds of Crime Act for confiscation of that financial benefit. Some recent highlights from trading standards. The first one up here is Falling Lane Superstore, which was a recent prosecution following a series of test purchases of under-the-counter tobacco sales, and a search warrant was executed by trading standards, but not just for the shop, for the flat upstairs, as we knew that this was under the same ownership as the shop. And what we found was concealed tobacco products, and this was counterfeit tobacco products, in boxes labelled as toys and sort of inflatables and things like that. And it was quite a significant sentence. The defendant received 12-month community order, but also the thing with this one is we actually got the POCA confiscation order because we could prove that he'd benefited financially from this illegal activity. The next case, Bottle and Brew, very similar case involving illicit alcohol and tobacco products. This was a good example of concealed tobacco being found by one of the detection dogs. The Connect Parking Limited, this was a long investigation, and it was a defendant who ran a business offering secure airport parking, and in reality there was no secure parking. He was parking cars in fields, private roads, and even our car parks. He was only discovered when his customers began receiving parking fines after they got back from holiday at their address. The criminal benefit, which would have been available under POCA, was in excess of £500,000. However, the defendant did actually declare himself bankrupt, meaning that the eventual confiscation order was just £1 under POCA. So it was an interesting case, this one. The Council and Trading Standards team have recently been awarded a grant of £240,000 by the Office of Product Safety and Standards, and this is to undertake the Ports Product Safety Operation. So they actually fund us to undertake proactive searches of all the cargo sheds in and around Heathrow. And some of these cargo sheds are actually they're located far away from the airport. So we have cargo sheds in other boroughs. They're known as transit sheds. So we have actually received funding to undertake the work in Ealing as well. So we're working at the moment in drawing up an agreement with Ealing Trading Standards to inspect and take action under the cargo sheds based in London Borough of Ealing. So that's all going very well at the moment. The sorts of things that they will look for are electricals, toys, cosmetics, and even PPE. We've seen huge amounts of not fit for purpose PPE coming through the port, particularly last year. And the licensing service, last but not least, this team are responsible for regulating and licensing a range of activities in businesses across hospitality, entertainment, retail, close contact and animal businesses. The prime purpose of these regulations is to ensure that these activities are carried out in a safe and compliant way, and to create a safe environment for residents to undertake these services and to enjoy these business premises. And some more obscure business permissions and licensing permissions that I haven't listed there. We deal also with things like stage hypnotism and also dangerous wild animal licenses. We don't get many of those in Hillingdon. Some recent highlights from the team. I've included there. So even throughout the pandemic, it's been more or less business as usual, perhaps not to the same volume, but we've still been carrying on with hearings and virtual decisions, etc., through the licensing subcommittees. And one of the top case you can see there, the Shisha Lounge in West Drayton. This was a licence that was refused due to poor compliance with COVID regulations, and this particular operator chose to open the premises at a time where all Shisha Lounges were supposed to be closed under lockdown, and also at a time where the transmission rates and case numbers were extremely high. So that was a refusal. The Puppy Farm dog breeding case on the second item there. This was a long criminal animal welfare investigation that took some 2.5 years to bring to a conclusion. It actually started with a warrant being executed by the licensing team in December 2018, and we found dogs and a large number of dogs and cats being kept in quite poor conditions, being used for breeding and sale. And then due to a number of legal challenges and the effects of the pandemic, it finally concluded in April this year with a very positive result for the council. And we took 23 cats and 23 dogs into our possession, which were subsequently rehomed, and the entire case resulted in fines, costs and expensive in excess of £340,000. About £280,000 of that came to the council to cover our expenses. The final one there is another Shisha Lounge case. This one is a little different from the first one I mentioned, because this was an existing licensed premises that actually had its licence taken away due to issues of poor compliance, breaches of licence condition and poor compliance with smoke-free regulations. So they were subject to a hearing in 2021 where the licensing subcommittee actually revoked their licence. I've included a couple of slides on some of the coronavirus business activities. Throughout the lockdown, there was little in the way of licence applications for the team to be getting on with. So we repurposed our licensing team and some of our food, health and safety team, as there were no restaurants to inspect either, to enforcing the coronavirus restrictions regulations. And this involved really just to enforce against premises who were supposed to be closed. Throughout the various stages of lockdown, there's been a raft of regulations and sort of regular changes, particularly last year. So they've really been sort of leading on that. And I've included just some figures for you there. And since June last year, when everything started to open up again after the first lockdown, we've actually done around 10,000 compliance visits to business premises around Hillingdon, and these would have taken place morning, noon, night, weekend, evening, to check compliance with those coronavirus regulations. There are a fair number of written warnings issued for breaches, and also 40 fixed penalty notices were issued. But it hasn't all been about enforcement. Most recently, and I've also included a page there on what we've been doing to help businesses get back on their feet. Obviously, the enforcement represents a very, very small minority of our otherwise very compliant and very good businesses in Hillingdon. And there's just some figures there for you. The council resolved to make pavement licences free for Hillingdon businesses, so they could, while they weren't able to allow customers inside, they could make use of the pavement, reliant on the good old British weather, of course. So we've got well over 100 hospitality premises that have taken advantage of that so far, which is really nice. And we've also carried out, since the 12th of April, 1,600 advisory and support visits, and this is really just to give businesses some support, the regulatory support with reopening, risk assessments for COVID compliance, any assistance that they need in order to reopen. We've also put COVID marshal patrols in COVID shopping in shopping areas. You may have seen them out and about, and they are really the public-facing element. Our enforcement officers and our licensing officers are more dealing with the businesses, but the COVID marshals are really to reassure the public and the residents. They've also been handing out packs of PPE, sanitisers, masks, and also information leaflets as well. We've been providing support to the hospitality sector on the best way to accommodate more spectators for the Euro tournament, and we've been helping them kind of just come up with ideas for the use of their outdoor spaces and putting up extra screens whilst not being a nuisance to neighbours as well. So we've been kind of helping them with just additional support and additional safety measures as we do feel that it's going to be quite a popular weekend, particularly when England are playing. So it's really just been providing some support to our pubs to do that. We've also been undertaking licensing visits to the beauty and personal care businesses, because obviously the close contact nature of these businesses is quite a high risk for transmission. So we've been giving them extra support and advice and advising them on PPE, screens and all of that sort of thing. We're working on a range of programmes throughout the borough, and we've just finalised some details for the Uxbridge Welcome Back Summer Market and Events programme, which is going to involve a programme of events and entertainment, children's entertainment rides and additional things like that throughout the summer holidays. And we do also, we are in the kind of mid stages of planning those for the other centres as well around the borough. Which brings me to the end. I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
Well, first of all, thank you, Stephanie, for that detailed overview. Your teams do work extremely hard, and certainly through the pandemic, they've re-engineered themselves in some areas as well to offer help in other areas, which obviously we're all grateful for as well. But just looking at some of the results, you don't realise some of the things that actually go on until you actually see it in front of you. So congratulations to your teams on how you work. I've heard about the Uxbridge Summer Market coming in, and I think that's going to be fantastic for Uxbridge, and getting people back out, but in a safe way. So that will be good, and to have those sort of things in other centres as well will also be good. Councillor Sweeting.
Thank you, Chairman, and can I thank you and your whole team for the tremendous work that you've been doing throughout the pandemic. You've been beavering away with all of these very detailed information that you've given us, and we do appreciate it. I know that sounds a very little thing to say, but we really do, and if you could pass that back to your team, we would, I'm sure from the whole committee, we will really appreciate that.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm very proud of them all. They've done very, very well this whole period, so thank you. It's much appreciated.
I have a couple of questions. First of all, it seems that there are several things that actually you have highlighted and have worked on in my own ward of West Drayton. I know the puppy farm was, it was devastating to hear about that, and I heard about it in the local paper. So when do you actually involve councillors on something that actually involves their own ward? It's not only that, but also the, I think the issue about the Connect parking. A lot of my residents were actually informing me of all of these vehicles in various car parks not a million miles away in West Drayton. So again, that came through my residents to the council, but I wasn't advised formally of either of those two cases. So when do you advise the local councillors?
That's a good question, thank you. It's with the puppy farm one, this was such a complex criminal investigation, we weren't actually at a point where we could release information. It is unfortunate that you did find out through the local paper, and I will check what the protocol is for involving local councillors in those operations. A lot of the time, what my teams are dealing with is often very sensitive information, and we're not able to kind of share that until the whole matter is concluded. But obviously, by the time it's in the papers, it's in the public domain. So I will check that and just clarify that procedure with the teams. When we can actually notify local ward councillors of quite significant issues in their area.
I think it gets back to what you said, Stephanie. I think it's when it's a criminal case, when it's under investigation. we have criminal cases within the hospital I work for. I can't go into details because, obviously, and there are certain people within our trust that will know about them, but because they're under a criminal investigation, no one else can. And I think it gets limited because of that, and I think that's what would happen. The Connect parking one I knew about because that was on my watch at the time, and I knew about that from the outset when I went to park my car in a certain car park, and I thought, wow, it's busy in here today. So you know, there is a very thin line. I think you're right, Stephanie. It's a very thin line that you have to adhere to legally, and by the time you would inform a ward councillor, it's already gone to court, or it's already been released, not even by us, but by the police or somebody else, and therefore it's in the public domain then. And then, quite rightly, ward councillors are saying, well, hold on a minute, why didn't I think that's what it's about. It's about the legalities of it.
Please, Chairman.
You can have one more, and then I've got Councillor Barnes and Councillor to my right here who also wishes to speak. And I'm afraid that, you know, when we have other councillors that wish to speak, I'm sure you will appreciate that we do allow them to speak. And I'm sure after Councillor Tuckwell and Councillor Barnes have spoken, I'm sure that there may even be more questions from your side or from this side. So, yes, you can have one more follow-up, then I'll bring in Councillor Barnes.
Could I clarify whether your team deals with dust pollution? And if so, how do you monitor that and identify the business or businesses that are causing dust pollution?
The short answer, Councillor, is no, unfortunately. Although some of the environmental issues do cross over, and I have a team of environmental health officers, and there are other teams of environmental health officers around the council, but it's not under my remit. That would actually fall under ASBIT to enforce and to investigate. No problem.
Councillor Barnes.
Thank you, Chairman. Hi, Stephanie. I mean, as you know, I sat on the licensing committee for a while with you, and it was always very busy. I am so impressed with what you put in here because and like Councillor Sweeting and the Chairman have said, you're doing so much. I can't believe what you've done during last year. You've been out and about absolutely everywhere. And the fact that you've done this, you know, you're looking at the gas safety compliance and you've got 1,000 businesses you are going out and about doing. Now, I just want to clarify with you, Stephanie, because I remember when I was on the committee before, I've heard that trading standards have said that they only ever go out if they get a lead. They don't just do spot checks. Is that still the way it is? And could you just confirm that the chaps at Heathrow Airport, the imported food service, are they there all the time, or do they just do call-outs?
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. With your first question, our trading standards service are intelligence-led, so it means that they will only investigate where there's intelligence. Where there's an intelligence source, a complaint, or a source of intelligence, they will then go and investigate. The gas safety project is a proactive project, and that's under the Food Health and Safety team. So the Food Health and Safety team can undertake proactive work, and they will undertake proactive spot checks, as do the licensing team, actually. But trading standards are purely intelligence-led. Going to the imported food service, they are there 24/7, pretty much, with 12,000 consignments each year. We probably average, in a normal year, sometimes over 400 consignments a week. So we have quite a big team down there, and they are there all the time. So we have offices that are actually physically located in the cargo terminal, and that's where they work, out of the border. We've got 2 border inspection posts down there, and that's where the consignments come through.
I personally think we should meet the team of dogs. Councillor Tuckwell.
Thank you, and thank you for a very extensive presentation, and well done for what's been a very busy year, I think, for you and your team. I think I know the answer based on what you just said to Councillor Barnes, but my interest is in relation to what you said very early on around health and safety. Is that covered off with a series of audits, or is that intelligence led through reports to you guys? And what kind of links do you have with the health and safety executive?
Okay, thank you very much. So the jurisdiction for health and safety is a little bit odd in that it's split between two enforcing authorities, the local authority and the HSE, the Health and Safety Executive, and they will enforce in certain circumstances, but we would enforce mainly in business settings. We can't obviously enforce in our own buildings, so that's when the HSE would come in, and I don't believe we can do schools either. I think that's the HSE. So there's certain settings where the HSE will come in and do that. The legislation changed a while ago and that we no longer do proactive health and safety visits. So like we would do a proactive food hygiene visit when it comes up and it's due every 24 months or every 12 months, we're there. We do that proactive food hygiene visit. It used to be like that with health and safety, but it's no longer like that. So we just we are a reactive service, and we will investigate complaints, again, intelligence-led or complaint-led.
No, thank you very much.
Any other questions for Stephanie? No? Well, thank you, Stephanie. And again, I can just echo what everybody said. Take our thanks back to your teams, because you quite rightly should be proud of what they do for this borough and for the residents of this borough. And I know that sometimes the circumstances you find yourselves in are not always the best or the easiest, but you still deal with them on behalf of this borough in such a professional manner. So thank you to you and your teams, and if you can take that back for us. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I will definitely take that thanks back. Thank you.
So moving on to agenda item 7, which is committee review topic selection phase. Before we do start on this, I'm assuming all committee members saw the email sent round from Councillor Sweeting. Yes? Yes, okay. Councillor Sweeting, obviously I've read it, committee members have read this. If you want to just take 5 minutes to broadly say why you think we should divert away from the suggested major review, which I've had discussions with the Cabinet member about, which is obviously electric vehicles and moving forward and shaping the agenda of that for our residents in the borough. So do you want to just spend 5 minutes just telling us why you think we should drop that one and take up your suggested review of the antisocial behaviour?
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, I did detail it in quite a lot of detail in my email, and I do recognise, and I think we all recognise, the importance of the issue of the electric vehicles, because that links very, very well to the green agenda. And I wouldn't in any way want to stop the council from investigating that. But as my note suggested, there's a lot of detail already there. A lot of councils have already delivered policies on this. Even some London boroughs have delivered policies, and they've used various documents. And I only dipped into the documents that were available, and I was sort of inundated by the numbers and the detailed information that councils have already received. And looking at the timetable that we would set ourselves for witness statements, information from officers, questioning, etc., etc., it's not going to be before November that we get anything down on paper, and then that will need to be obviously considered by Cabinet, go out, maybe even public consultation, I don't know. And I was sort of highlighting the fact that I thought that this issue could be dealt with much more quickly by officers producing a document, using all of the information that's already out there and coming up with something that we could go out possibly to public consultation much sooner than November, December of this year. So that was, I think we recognise that there's been some criticism in the media and by residents coming to us on this issue certainly I've had quite a few members' inquiries on the issue of I can't get my electric vehicle point. Where are they within the borough? And I think there's been various reports from Hillingdon media, various media sources on that very issue. But I am looking at what is coming to me and many of my colleagues on the issues that really concern our residents. And it's antisocial behaviour in all its forms. It can be very minor. It can be an overhanging bush that's creating a problem for the next door neighbour. It can be noise coming from the barbecue when we were allowed to have barbecues in our gardens. It can be all those sorts of things. It can be minor and major, and it's all under this phrase of antisocial behaviour. And what I often find is that residents contact me. I say, have you contacted the police? Often it's maybe the day before, and therefore there's time that's gone on that doesn't allow the issue to be addressed immediately. Then sometimes it will be the council working with the police. Sometimes the police will be leading the council. And so what I've found on several of the very, very big cases that I have dealt with my fellow councillors in West Drayton is that some of these cases have been going on for years and years. And there's been a lack of understanding by some residents how evidence is used to move an antisocial behaviour case forward, and how much detailed evidence is needed. The police need it, the council needs it. And sometimes cases are dealt with that are very easy to be dealt with, very superficial. Some misaligned guttering, for example, comes to mind on one of the cases that I've dealt with. When some of the very, very big and quite nasty cases, because of their complexity and who is doing what and when, there is confusion that residents have on those cases. So I'm not in any way suggesting that electric vehicles is not an important issue to be considered. I really am not. I know that we need to move that issue forward because it is part of our green agenda that the council has signed up for. But I think it could be done quicker and more speedy with the information that's already available. And I do think that if we were using the point system and we were given the Appendix A, and I filled in the Appendix A with the antisocial behaviour issue, resident focused 5 points, correct remit 5 points, influence 5 points. It went all the way through there. And I think there's been some discussions in residents' groups about electric vehicles. I have a notification from a meeting that took place quite recently, and certainly residents were of the opinion that electric vehicle issues were important, but there were other issues such as antisocial behaviour that they would rather be tackled first. So that's my case. It might not be 5 minutes, but so I'm suggesting that major review. It does encompass a very large area of work, and I do recognise that. But it is something that time and time again we are seeing, and I'm sure you're seeing as well, other members in all parts of the borough are seeing members' inquiries going in on various aspects of antisocial behaviour, hence me bringing it to this committee for consideration.
Thank you. Councillors? Councillor Lewis?
I have to say I'm inordinately impressed by Adam Stinson and his team on antisocial behaviour, and the sheer fact is we have an extraordinarily good system in place. You might be right that the publicity, we need more publicity to actually explain the divide between the police and our antisocial behaviour teams, but actually they do a top job. I have to say I really cannot see how we can avoid doing the electric vehicles. It is so vitally important that we actually get to grips with it for the council's green agenda and our obligations to going carbon neutral. I just cannot see how the fear of taking between now, which is the 6th month of the year, and the 11th month of the year, 5 months to get policies scrutinised and drawn up. It seems to me to be an incredibly short time. So my vote would actually be to continue on with the environmental electric vehicles, and I'm afraid I don't really see antisocial behaviour being. It's vitally important that we keep on, but we are fantastic at it. I mean, we've got more cameras everywhere, and we have a fantastic team doing a really good job. So you're absolutely right. We need to publicise, and so people have that telephone number to hand so they can report it. But other than that, I think we're doing a pretty damn good job.
Thank you, Councillors. Councillor Tuckwell, you indicated.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two really important topics. There's no doubt about that. Antisocial behaviour. I think all as councillors, we're dealing with that topic all of the time. But electric vehicles gains my support for a number of reasons. One is it's a major infrastructure project. It covers the medium term and the long term. As technology begins to develop, we're going to have more and more of our residents looking to go electric, and if we haven't got the infrastructure in place, it's not going to work. So for me, I think we need to put the solid foundations in place, and I think the opportunity to review that through this committee will enable council officers to be able to do that. There is lots of information out there, but I think it's not a one size fits all, depending on certain circumstances within the borough. So my firm vote will be to continue with the electric vehicle review, but not forgetting that antisocial behaviour is as important. And I note from the work programme that's scheduled for a review in September, and I think that's an opportunity for this committee to really sort of scrutinise what is happening there, because antisocial behaviour is very fluid. In certain parts of the borough, certain times of the year, it's changing all of the time. The electric vehicles is a set-piece infrastructure change that we need to get right. So that's where I'll be going on that one, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Tuckwell. Councillor Barnes.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Sweeting. I agree again with my fellow councillors and yourself as well. Both are extremely heavy loaded topics that are both as equally as important. As Councillor Lewis has said, we do a brilliant job already, and maybe we should be showing people or just raising their awareness of where they can go and what they can do. The electric vehicle topic is so important at the moment. It's everywhere in the news, and like you say, there's lots of other London boroughs that have already started or are doing things. We are falling so behind. I've had so many residents say that they want to do the good green thing and get their electric car, but they don't want to park it 8 miles down the road to find a charging point. If it's about 8 miles, it could be even further than that. It's so vitally important, I feel. And as Councillor Lewis has said, between now and November is actually a very short time to look at it in great depth, to really scrutinise, because there is so much information on it. It is absolutely huge. So my vote this evening would be going for the electric vehicles topic.
Councillor Sullivan.
Regarding electric vehicles, it has my support, as I see it as the way forward, not to detract from antisocial behaviour, which we deal with on a day-to-day basis. There's a lot of processes in place dealing with the police and with the council on antisocial behaviour. So I think electric vehicles, or I know electric vehicles has my full support.
Thank you. Councillor Lukmana, I'll come to you after, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with everything that everybody said, but I'd like to commend my fellow councillor here for listing all the documents that are currently available. I think that was an excellent suggestion, and suggesting that a report could be done from that. So well done, Jan. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Lewis, you can add some more benefit.
I was just going to say that I would point out that some of those documents are actually quite old. They're a couple of years old. And there are three factors that separate Hillingdon from other London boroughs. One is we have the highest car ownership of any London borough. The second is we actually have very poor transport links, being an outer borough. We're at the end of train lines, and so we don't have you can't go west and you can't go north. It's actually quite poorly served. So that's why we have such large car ownership. And we are an incredibly large borough. It's the second largest borough in London. So if you bring those three factors in, we have got to resolve, and the fact that by 2030 the government has decreed that we are all going to be driving electric vehicles. And that is really not a very long time away.
No, certainly isn't. Definitely not. I agree with everything has been said by my fellow councillors here this evening, that antisocial behaviour is an important topic to all of us, as is the electric vehicles. We do have that service review coming up in September, where we will be able to have a detailed presentation similar to the one we had this evening from Stephanie, where we'll be able to push. So obviously what we can't do, and I must make this clear to every single member of this committee, is not take up specific ward cases when we do this review, please. It will be based on the service itself and how it's run. If you have specific cases, they're the ones that you send through to resident services. So it does have merits, and yes, we all deal with antisocial behaviour, and we all have dealt with it within our wards and within our remits. But I do feel that fundamentally the electric vehicles is the way that we've got to go forward on our topic for this particular year. We've got to remember that it's being shortened somewhat by an event next May. I wonder what that could possibly be. So we've got to remember that, you know, what we're doing is shaping the way that this council will be moving forward. And Councillor Barnes touched on it, that we are falling behind, and so did Councillor Tuckwell. We are falling behind on other councils. I do commend you, like your fellow councillor did, about the number of documents that you just produced here. But I do have to point out, like Councillor Lewis did, some of them are over 2 years old. And some of them are probably referring to what the infrastructure was back in 2019 that probably doesn't even exist now because it's moved on. You know, back in 2019, we didn't have the self-charging car. Now, Tesla don't only just have a self-charging car, it drives itself, from what I can understand. You can almost just sit there and off it goes. But there's probably other, I just want to stress, there's probably other vehicles out there that do that, not just Tesla. But yeah, that's what I just said. But, you know, I think it's our opportunity as a committee to actually shape something that's going to benefit the children that are now going to be looking at the future. And, you know, after we're long gone and it's all changed to electric vehicles, we can probably be proud that we helped shape the fact how Hillingdon installs whatever it installs, or the green programme that we had. We had some input to that. Because I get people within my ward saying, why can't I find an electric charging point unless I go to a public car park? Or I go to Tesco's, or I go to another supermarket, other supermarkets are available, where there are charging points. So, you know, I feel that we've got to go with that. I do thank you for your suggestion. Don't dismiss it out of hand, because it is an important topic to all of us as councillors, because in our times as councillors we've dealt with very difficult cases ourselves as well. But Councillor Lewis said, the team we've got there now work their socks off. They're a great team. We've got the cameras. We're investing everywhere. We've got the police teams. We've got the police sergeants. So we are moving with that agenda. And I feel that we do need to take the electric vehicles. I just need to check with our clerk now whether we need to take a vote on, do we support Councillor Sweeting's suggestion or not, and then do we take a vote on the electric vehicle?
So it seems there's general agreement that an EV review would win out if we went to a vote. So we don't. I don't.
We don't need to.
We do need to go to
That's
a vote, but you can request one if you wish.
Councillor Sweeting.
Well, can I first of all thank each member of this committee for putting their point of view. I think that was important to share that for me to share it with you and for you to come back with your comments on that, and I do appreciate that. And I also know that we have been rather tardy as a council in grasping the nettle on electric vehicles. I know there has been some criticism, so again I do recognise that. But I would not want to criticise in any way officers. I was an officer of Hillingdon Council myself, and I can assure you that I think very highly of our officer base. All I would say on, and this is my final couple of sentences, is that there is some confusion out there with our residents, and we do need to try to make it easier for them to know if they have got a problem, where do they go and what evidence they need. And if that can be sort of clarified, I think it would be very helpful. Anyway, I thank you all, and thank you, Chairman.
And thank you for that suggestion. And what I will do, Councillor Sweeting, I will actually ask Steve Clark to make sure that that is part of the service review presentation, so that that element comes out, so that it's made clear to us that these are the elements that are our responsibility, they're the elements that are their responsibility, and these are the joint elements. So I will ask Steve to make sure that's part of the service review we get in September to us. Okay, so we're all agreed that the electric vehicles will be our major topic review. Over the coming week or so, we will probably be putting together a list of companies, etc., that we'll be asking in as witnesses. I would ask you if you know of any residents at all that are having issues that would be willing to face this wonderful select committee. If you, Councillor Barnes.
I'll just jump in there, Chairman. I do have a resident who's very knowledgeable on the EV topics and is a resident who is having issues getting an electric car to try and charge it, and I would be willing to come and speak to the committee.
Okay, could I ask you then to pass those details to Steve Clark, and Steve, then we'll do the necessary to invite the resident in. And if any other councillors have any thoughts, please do email me if you think of any companies that we can benefit from. Certainly, Councillor Sweeting, thank you for that list of documents. Steve is probably now very thankful for that list of documents.
There are many more out there,
I know
Chairman.
there are. I actually get emails in my council email almost daily from various electric vehicle companies and seminars, etc., etc. So I think that this committee will deliver a good review to help shape the way we move forward as Hillingdon, to get it greener and to help us in a way to start catching up with some of those councils at the moment that Councillor Barnes and Councillor Tuckwell touched on that are way ahead of us already. So I think that's very important. So thank you, everybody. So then moving on to agenda item 8 is the forward plan. And on this, Steve, it's just really to go through and have a look at what's coming up, I assume, and if anybody wants to make comments on it.
Yeah, just to note the forward plan, the items that are included are relevant to this committee, so you don't have every item that's on the forward plan. It's just the items that are under Councillor Riley's portfolio and therefore relevant to this select committee.
Councillor Sweetin.
Thank you very much, Chairman. If you look at the Cabinet meeting of the 2nd of September, there's a report going regarding the Transport for London Local Implementation Plan annual spending submission.
Yeah, the
now,
annual LIP. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
No, yeah. We have got an information item coming to our next meeting, which says service overview transportation. So will that report include any information? Because that will be before the Cabinet report.
Steve?
I can request that from David Knowles, who will be delivering the transportation item at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other... I can see on here, Stephanie, that on the 14th of October, Heathrow Airport provision of pesticide analysis, radiation testing, bacterial testing of imported foods is on the Cabinet agenda. So you do radiation testing down there as well?
Yeah, because of the Fukushima in Japan, the reactor explosion a good few years ago, it's actually caused radiation in the fish stock in those waters. Right. So any fish that comes from those waters, we have to check it for radiation.
Oh, I never knew that. Councillor Lewis.
Well, can I just say that they're finding it the other side of the Pacific, fish with radiation. So we should be probably checking it from American shores as well.
Yeah, what you've got there is the contract, the tender for the contract there.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't realise you'd done radiation as well. Anything else on the full plan that any committee members want further clarification on? I think it's all straightforward at the moment. Okay, so we're happy with that, and obviously Councillor Sweetin will get the details for the next meeting. So then moving on to agenda item 9, which is our Public Safety and Transport Select Committee work programme. The dates for the meeting, as you can see, the first one is CR5 because that's tonight. And then every single meeting after that has got TBC. Right, so we have 28th of July. That was a request to move from the 27th, because originally we were 27th. So we moved to 28th, hence why you all got an email saying we were around on the 28th. Are we agreed on the 28th? Agree? Okay. Are we agreed? It's probably easier to say, are we agreed on every date, or does somebody have a query over one of them or two of them? So we've got the 21st of September, 19th of October, 17th of November, 18th of January, Happy New Year, 10th of February, 8th of March, and then our final one would be on the 7th of April. Councillor Sweetin?
I am on another scrutiny committee, which is the Families Committee, which is the reason why...
we changed the date of the...
So I haven't done a thorough check of diaries for next year. So unless, making certain that there's no further clashes in respect of the Families Committee as well as this committee clashing, I'm okay with those dates.
Okay, if Steve, you could check that, please. At some point, you've probably already done it, actually.
Yeah, because I believe Councillor Lewis is also on maybe the Corporate Services Select Committee. Yeah, so we've got two members who are on two select committees.
So these dates slot in nicely.
Yeah. So unfortunately, this committee didn't exist, obviously, when the the programme of meetings went to full council in February.
Yeah.
So the three POCs that existed at the time, the other three select committees have assumed their dates, and then we had to find new dates for this committee, which is why these weren't agreed at full council, and we've potentially had some clashes. But yeah, working through them one at a time.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. And then obviously we do have the work programme. We've got a large one, or I've got the smaller one I printed off myself. So if we just have a look in July, we have coming to us mid-year budget planning report, cabinet forward plan, which we'll always have every month. Councillor Sweeting.
There are 3 one-off service monitoring reports coming to us. I know that we had a verbal report today, and that was an excellent report. But if we are going to fulfil our scrutiny role, could I ask for those reports to be written reports, please? And that will give us time to, to read through them. I mean, I know we had the chance to question the officer today, and that was an excellent report. But it would be much easier to scrutinise written reports prior to the meeting.
Steve, yes, please.
So as you'll see, the 6 service areas that are under this committee's terms of reference do have an item in the first few months, in the first few meetings of this committee, just as a service overview. We have told officers that a written report isn't required, it's more of a presentation. Unfortunately, projectors aren't working today, which is why it's been a bit more kind of hard copies. But I can endeavour for officers to get their presentations ready as soon as possible, so then I could circulate those slides with committee members, if that's okay for you, Councillor Sweeting.
I think that would be fine. I think the presentations, the way Stephanie done hers this evening, was great. We were able to question Stephanie, and she answered what queries we had. Because when you look in July, we've got 3 service overviews in July. So I'd be tying up 3 teams to get full written reports rather than a presentation. And then again in September, we've got 2, one of them being the antisocial behaviour and enforcement team one, which would probably be the biggest presentation, I would think. So I'm happy with it coming in presentation format, and I think that's what we should go with, because we're not cabinet, so we can't expect a full written report. I think this that was produced by Stephanie was excellent. It was easy to follow. We could get questions off of that, and we all did get questions off of that. So if they can get them done, because they know this is what they've got to do, so if they can get them done as soon as possible, then we can get them, then that would be great. Yeah? Okay. So I think the programme that's been put together is very good. So at the next meeting, we'll be doing the scoping report for I'll come to you in a second, Councillor Lakmana. I just want to clarify this with Steve first. July will be the scoping report. Then we've got September, October for witness sessions. Then November would be when we're looking at findings from those and getting that together. Okay, that's fine. Councillor Lakmana.
Thank you, Chair. A request, please, to add electric scooters under the one-off service monitoring section, please. Because there's a lot of concern from residents about the e-scooters.
I think the electric scooters are probably going to come under possibly antisocial behaviour. Yeah. Because I know that in London the police have been issuing tickets around Hyde Park, etc.
Yeah.
The issue we have is that some councils are running this programme where, yes, we support you, you can do it. You can go into Slough, and at the side of the road, I work there, a major hospital there, at the side of the road or near supermarkets or in the centre itself, there are these orange electric scooters with the helmets as well. And I don't know how you get them, whether you tap your credit card or whatever and it unlocks it so you can use it. Oh, is it? It's an app. There you go. Councillor Lewis knows. And then you just take this thing, because I know there's a member of staff at my hospital who uses them every single day, because I see her come in on it and she just literally leaves it outside, because obviously it's not hers. So whatever happens to it, she doesn't care. And so that's an issue, but I think that would probably come under antisocial behaviour. Can I ask you, Steve, to check that, where that would drop in? Councillor Lewis.
The rented ones are actually legal.
Yeah, it's the unrented ones, and but we don't support the rented ones. Hillingdon never have. We were asked to. We were asked to be part of the pilot, and we rejected it because we felt that our residents wouldn't want it, and certainly the complaints we're getting, they don't want them. Councillor Barnes?
Thank you, Chairman. The trial's going to take a year. They've only just started it this week. They're going to take 1 year in the 6 boroughs that are doing it, the London boroughs that are doing it. And they have a zone that they can only go in. So even though you can hire them, I think there's £3.25 to £3.40 to use them. And they can only go in this certain area. So they can't just take it out of it because it shuts down and stops working. And then they have to return them and they get charged anyway. And they are, like Councillor Lewis says, they're the rented ones, which are the legal ones. So all the other ones are totally antisocial behaviour because they shouldn't be on the pavements, they should be on the roads because they're motor vehicles, that's what they're classed as. And you're supposed to have a provisional driving licence to get one in the first place. But they're a nuisance at the moment, totally.
Yeah. So I think if you can check, Steve, if that comes, and if it does, then can we have that as part of their service review as well? Yes. Councillor Sweetin.
Yes, I mean, I've had several emails from residents saying that they've been near misses, and in fact today, coming to this meeting, I mean, I was confronted with a young man who was on one of these scooters that literally came in front of me, and there was a screech of brakes, and luckily, no problem, but it is obviously a big issue now, because this is happening around us as we speak.
Yeah. You can see them daily going through the high street, but I'm sure it's antisocial behaviour, and if Steve, you can check that for us. So that's our work programme. We've got some interesting areas within our work programme, I think. I do think that in September, the antisocial behaviour and enforcement team 1 service overview will be one that will stir up quite a bit of debate, I think. Certainly from this evening, as you know, Councillor Sweetin, we all support what you're saying, but we just felt that the electric vehicles just had the edge, because we need to really push that agenda, whereas we think the antisocial behaviour side, there needs to be a bit more clarity about who, why, where, when. So if anybody else wishes to make any comments about the work programme, Councillor Sullivan?
Just a thought. Review. Is there any chance that we can discuss alley gates? Because on the street briefings and talking to the residents, this comes up time and time again, where alley gates are gated and people lose the keys, people move away. Is there any way that we could look at that?
Can we find out whose remit that comes in, Steve, please?
I'll ask them to include
we'll find out
in their writing.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, queries? We're all happy? Well, thank you for our inaugural meeting of this Public Safety and Transport Select Committee. Thank you very much. It was very good to see you all in committee rooms again. And thank you, Steve, as our clerk. And Stephanie, once again, thank you very much. And please remember to take all our thanks back to your teams. And thank you, and I wish you all a good evening.